handful of coins clattered onto a chipped counter. Pennies rolled. Nickels spun across the formica. A trembling hand chased after them. The hand belonged to an old man, thin as a fence post, coat too big for his shoulders, shoes taped at the toes. His other arm clutched a single loaf of white bread to his chest, like it was the last thing he owned. The teenage cashier sighed, loud, bored. The line behind him grew. He was 3 cents short. Then the bell above the door jingled. Heavy boots hit the tile. A leather vest. A patch on the back nobody in that store wanted to read out loud. The old man's name was Walter Hayes. He had no idea what was about to happen. What happened in the next 60 seconds left every person in that grocery store frozen in silence. Stay with me on this one. The store was called Mercer's. It sat at the corner of Pine and 4th, the kind of grocery you only know about if you grew up in town. Walter had been shopping there for 43 years. The cashier today, the one rolling her eyes, was the granddaughter of a man Walter used to drink coffee with after church. She did not know that. She did not know much about Walter at all. He had come in for one thing, a loaf of white bread, $1.99. He had been counting his coins on the front porch for an hour before he walked over. $2.17. He thought that was enough. He had forgotten about the tax. The bread was for tonight. He had a little peanut butter at home in his cooler. The cooler sat in the trunk of his 1992 Buick LeSabre, along with everything else he owned in the world. Walter's wife Margaret had been gone for 14 months. Cancer. The kind that takes a person slow and expensive. By the time she died, the house was already in trouble. The bank took it 8 weeks after the funeral. Walter kept the photo albums and her wedding ring. He sold everything else. His Social Security came to $943 a month. The medications for his heart and his blood pressure took $512. The rest went to gas, oil, and food. He had been sleeping in the Buick for almost a year. Nobody at the store knew that. Walter made sure of it. He shaved every morning at the rest stop on Highway 12. He kept his shirts pressed. He kept his shoes shined, even when the soles had started to come away from the leather. He had a daughter in Tucson. Her name was Rebecca. They had not spoken in 9 months. The last time they had talked, she had asked him to come live with her. He had said no. Pride is a stubborn old dog, and Walter was a stubborn old man. He served in Korea, 7th Cavalry. He went over in 1951 and came home in 1953 with a silver star and a piece of shrapnel still buried in his right calf. He had pulled 3 men out of a burning armored vehicle outside of Chipiong. 2 of them lived. 1 of them did not. Walter had never told that story to anyone except Margaret, and even then only once on their honeymoon, and only because she had asked him directly. Walter did not believe in war stories. He believed that the men who died deserved better than to be turned into anecdotes. Now here is the thing about Walter. He had never asked anyone for anything in his entire life. He did not know how. The word charity made him flinch. That is what brought him to the counter that afternoon. With shaking hands and a single loaf of bread and a pile of pennies he had pulled out of the ashtray of his car. Behind him, the bell above the door rang again. The man who walked in stood 6'4". He went 290 pounds in his boots. He had a beard down past his collar and a leather vest with patches sewn across the back. The biggest patch you could read from across the store. The other patches you did not want to read up close. His name was Frank Garrison. Around the chapter, nobody called him Frank. They called him Diesel. He had picked up the name in his 20s, when he used to drink straight from a fuel jug to scare off prospects who could not handle their liquor. He had not touched diesel or liquor in 11 years. The name had stuck anyway. Diesel had come into Mercer's for cigarettes. He had just gotten off a 14-hour day at his salvage yard out on County Road 6. He smelled like grease and engine oil. The cashier, who was named Brittany and was 19 years old, looked up when he walked in. She made a face. Diesel saw it. He had been seeing that face from teenagers and bank tellers and waitresses for 30 years. He walked toward the back of the store, where the cigarettes were kept behind the counter. That was when he passed Walter. He saw the trembling hand. He saw the coins on the formica. He saw the loaf of bread held tight against the old man's chest like a baby. And he stopped. He did not say anything yet. He just stood 3 feet behind Walter Hayes and he watched. Brittany counted the coins twice. She let them slide off her fingers back onto the counter. She did not bother to be careful with them. "Sir, you're at $2.17. The bread is $2.10 with tax. You're 7 cents short." Walter did not understand at first. He looked at the coins. He looked at Brittany. He looked at the bread. Hold on. I have. He patted his coat pockets. The right pocket. The left pocket. The inside pocket where he kept Margaret's wedding ring on a chain. He did not look there. He moved to the pants pockets. His hands were shaking now harder than before. He pulled out a button. A folded coupon for cottage cheese from 1998. Piece of lint. No coins. "I have it at home," he said. His voice was very quiet. "If I could come back." "Sir, you have to pay now or put it back." "I will come back tomorrow." "That's not how it works, sir." Behind Walter the line had grown to 6 people. A woman with a baby on her hip sighed loudly enough that Walter heard it. A man in a tie checked his watch and said something under his breath. A teenage boy with earbuds in started recording on his phone. He thought it would be funny. The manager came over. His name was Eric Mercer, the owner's grandson, and he was 32 years old and tired. He saw Walter. He saw the bread. He saw the line. He made the calculation that men in his position make 100 times a day. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step to the side. You can come back when you have the rest of the money." Walter's face went red. Not with anger. With shame. The kind of shame that lives in the body of a man who has never asked anyone for anything, and is now being told in front of a line of strangers that he does not have enough money to buy a loaf of bread. He nodded. He set the bread on the counter very carefully, as if it might break. He said, "I'm sorry to be a bother." He said it to nobody in particular. He started to turn. That was when Diesel spoke. "Hold up." Walter did not hear him at first. Walter's hearing was not what it used to be, and his blood was up in his ears, and he was already walking away from the counter. Diesel stepped forward. He put a hand on Walter's shoulder. Gentle. The kind of touch a man uses when he is twice the size of the person he is touching and he knows it. Walter froze. He turned. He saw the leather vest first. He saw the beard. He saw the patches. And for 1/2 second, Walter's face did what every old man's face does when a Hell's Angel touches his shoulder in a grocery store. He thought, "This is it. This is how I go." Diesel saw the look. He had seen it before. He took his hand off Walter's shoulder and held both palms up, low and slow. "Easy, brother. I got you." He turned to Brittany. "Ring up the bread." Brittany blinked at him. "And ring up 2 more. And a stick of butter. And whatever those are." He pointed at a display of granola bars by the register. Brittany did not move. "Ring it up, kid." She started scanning. Her hands were shaking too now, but for different reasons. Walter just stood there, holding the back of a chair near the lottery display so he would not fall over. Diesel pulled out his wallet. It was thick and old and had a chain on it. He took out a $100 bill and laid it flat on the counter. He looked at Walter. "Bread's on me. Don't argue with me about it." Not in front of the kid. Walter tried to argue anyway. "I cannot accept." "You can. I have not been a charity case my whole life." "You're not a charity case. You're a man who got short on a loaf of bread on a Tuesday. That happens. Take the bread." Walter looked at the $100 bill. He looked at the bread. He looked at Diesel's face, which was not what he had expected. The face was tired. The eyes were soft. There were small scars at the corner of one eye and a bigger scar through the eyebrow on the other side. but the face was calm. The face was not threatening at all. Walter took the bread. His hand shook so badly he almost dropped it. Diesel reached out and steadied the loaf for him. "There you go, brother. Easy." Brittany handed back the change. Diesel did not look at it. He pushed the change toward Walter. "Take this too. Buy yourself a Coke or something." Walter shook his head no. Diesel did not push it. He picked up the change himself, walked Walter to the front door, and held the door open for him. Walter stepped through. The bell above the door jingled for him this time. The line behind them was silent now. Brittany had stopped scanning. Eric, the manager, had stopped breathing for a second. The teenage boy with earbuds had lowered his phone. The woman with the baby on her hip had her hand over her mouth. Diesel walked back inside, picked up his pack of cigarettes, paid for them with another 20, and told Brittany to keep the change. He walked back outside. And there in the parking lot, Walter Hayes stood next to his old Buick LeSabre, holding a loaf of white bread to his chest. He looked up at the sky for a long second. He took a breath. The biker had bought him bread. That was the story. That was a beautiful little story he could carry with him for the rest of his life, however long that turned out to be. He could tell it to nobody the way he told most stories to nobody. But it would be his. He shuffled toward the driver's side door. He did not see Diesel coming up behind him. "Old-timer." The voice came from right behind him. Walter's shoulders went up like he had been hit. He turned slowly. Diesel was 3 feet away. He was not smiling. He was not threatening. He was just looking. "Where's your truck?" Walter pointed at the Buick. Diesel looked at the Buick. He looked at the back seat. He looked at the trunk lid that was tied down with a bungee cord because the latch had broken 6 months ago. He looked at the boxes stacked on the passenger side. He looked at the blanket folded on the driver's seat. He saw the cooler in the back. He saw a small American flag, folded into a triangle, sitting on the dashboard. He did not say anything for about 10 seconds. Then he said, "How long?" Walter did not answer. "How long, brother? How long have you been sleeping in this car?" Walter looked at his shoes. 11 months. Diesel breathed out through his nose. He put both hands on the roof of the Buick and leaned on it for a second, like a man steadying himself. Then he stood back up. "Wait here." He pulled a phone out of his vest pocket. He sent a text. Walter could not see the screen. He just stood there holding his loaf of bread, not understanding what was happening, not asking. For minutes passed. Walter knew because he kept looking at the clock on the dashboard through the driver's side window. Then a sound came down the road from the east, the deep cough of a Harley engine. And another, and another. 3 motorcycles came around the corner of Pine Street and rolled into the parking lot of Mercer's Grocery. They parked in a line behind Diesel's bike. The riders did not take off their helmets right away. They just sat on their bikes and looked. Inside the store, Brittany, the cashier, was on the phone to 911. She told the dispatcher that there were Hell's Angels in the parking lot harassing an old man. She believed she was telling the truth. She had no idea what was actually happening. Eric, the manager, came out of the front door. He was holding his cell phone. He stood at the edge of the sidewalk, not sure whether to approach. A police cruiser pulled into the lot 2 minutes later. A second one followed it. 4 officers got out. 2 of them put their hands on their belts. The other 2 did not. The first officer to approach was a man named Sergeant Daniel Park. He had been on the force for 19 years. He recognized Diesel by sight. He had pulled him over twice in the past 5 years and never had a problem with him. He had also had words with him at a charity ride for a children's hospital where Diesel and his chapter had raised $11,000 in one Saturday. Park walked up. He looked at Walter. He looked at the bikers. He looked at Diesel. "Frank, what's going on here?" Diesel pointed at Walter with his chin. "This is Walter. Walter is a Silver Star vet. He has been sleeping in his car for almost a year. The kid inside the store wouldn't sell him a loaf of bread for being 7 cents short. We are not letting that go. That's what's going on. Park looked at Walter. Sir, is that true? Walter did not know which part Park meant. He nodded anyway. Then he shook his head. Then he said, I am all right, officer. Please, I do not want any trouble. You're not in trouble, sir. Can I see some ID? Walter handed over his wallet. Park flipped it open. He saw the veteran's ID card. He saw the date of service. He saw the unit. He stood there for a moment without speaking. He handed the wallet back. Sir, thank you for your service. Walter nodded. Park turned to Diesel. What do you need from me, Frank? I need you to go back inside and tell that 19-year-old that everybody out here is fine. I need you to keep the manager from doing anything stupid. And I need you to give us about 30 minutes. Park looked at the other 3 officers. He looked at the bikers, who still had not taken their helmets off. He looked at Walter holding his bread. You got it. He walked back toward the store, waving the other officers off as he went. If you are still with me, hit that subscribe button. Because I am telling you, this is the part where the whole thing turns. This is the part nobody in that parking lot ever forgot. The 3 bikers got off their bikes. They took off their helmets. One was a man in his 50s with a long gray beard. One was a woman with a buzz cut and a denim vest. One was a younger man, maybe 35, with sleeves of tattoos down both arms. They walked over to Diesel. He told them quietly what was happening. He pointed at the Buick. He pointed at Walter. They listened. Then all 3 of them, without a word, walked into the grocery store. Walter looked at Diesel. Sir, I cannot. You're not doing anything, Diesel said. We are. The woman came out first, pushing a cart. There were blankets in it. New ones. Still in the plastic. There were 3 winter coats. There were socks. There were thermal undershirts. She walked the cart over to the Buick and started loading the back seat. The older biker came out next, pushing 2 carts at once. Food. Cans of soup. Cans of stew. Cans of beans. Pasta. Peanut butter. A whole case of bottled water. Loaves of bread. 3 of them. Real bread with seeds and grains, the kind Walter used to eat before Margaret got sick. The younger biker came out third. His cart had toiletries, soap, a new toothbrush, a razor, aftershave, a small first aid kit, a bottle of the heart medication brand that Walter recognized from the orange bottle in his glove box. He had no idea how the biker had known. Walter started crying. He did not make a sound. The tears just came down his face and into the lines around his mouth. Diesel saw it. He did not look away. He did not pretend not to see. You earned this, brother. A long time ago. Diesel made one more phone call. Walter heard pieces of it. Tank. Yeah. I need a room at the Pinewood Motel for tonight. Just one night to start. I'll cover it. Tell Linda at the desk it's for an old man. Yeah. He's a vet. Silver Star. Korea. Yeah. Send Bobby over too if he can come. We need to talk to the VFW in the morning. He hung up. He turned around. Walter had sat down on the concrete curb in front of the Buick. The bread was still in his lap. He had not let go of it. His hands were folded on top of it like a man holding a Bible. Diesel walked over. He sat down next to Walter on the curb. The vest creaked. The boots scraped. He took up most of the curb when he sat. Walter did not move away. Walter. Sir. Don't sir me. My name is Frank. Or Diesel. Whichever you can get your mouth around. Frank. Better. They sat for a minute. The bikers were still loading the car. Inside the store, Brittany was watching out the front window with her hand still over her mouth. The young man with earbuds had moved closer and was recording everything on his phone. He was no longer recording for laughs. He was recording because he knew he was looking at something he would never see again. Diesel said, "What's the most you ever needed, Walter?" Walter looked at him. "I do not understand the question." "In Korea." What's the most you ever needed and didn't ask for? There's always one. Every man who came home has one. Walter was quiet for a long time. The sun was going down behind the grocery store. The light was that yellow color it gets in November in the Midwest. He said, "There was a boy named Reyes." Diesel waited. He was 19. From New Mexico. He was bleeding out from his stomach in a ditch and he kept asking me for water. I had run out of water 2 hours before. He kept asking. I had nothing to give him. I had 1 syringe of morphine left for myself. I gave it to him, so he would not feel the thirst. He passed before sundown. I came home with the shrapnel still in my leg, and the morphine I should have used was inside Reyes. Diesel did not say anything for a while. Then he said, "My uncle came home from Vietnam in '72. He died in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven in Detroit in 1981. He had been hungry for 3 days. Nobody in that 7-Eleven knew. Nobody asked. He just sat down against the wall and went to sleep and did not wake up." Walter looked at Diesel. "I am sorry." "Yeah, me too. Every day." Diesel reached into the inside pocket of his vest. He pulled out a thick envelope. He did not hand it to Walter yet. He just held it on his knee. "This came from the chapter. It is $4,200. The boys put it together while I was on the phone. It is not all of it. There will be more. We have a fund." Walter shook his head. Slow. "I cannot." "Walter, look at me." Walter looked at him. "You did not ask for this. None of us are confused about that. You never asked for anything in your whole life. We know that. We can see it on you like a tattoo. So this is not charity. You hear me? This is a bill being paid. You paid for me before I was born. You paid for the boys behind you before they were born. We are not handing you a gift. We are settling an account that this country forgot to settle. You take it because we owe it, not because you need it. Do you understand?" Walter closed his eyes. He said, "Yes." He took the envelope. He held it on top of the loaf of bread. Behind them, the older biker with the gray beard had finished loading the back seat and was now wiping the windshield of the Buick with a roll of paper towels. The younger biker had checked all 4 tires and was using a hand pump on the front left, which had been low for 2 months. The woman biker was on her phone, talking to someone in a low voice about a place called Crown Ridge, which Walter would later learn was a small apartment building owned by a friend of the chapter where they kept 2 rooms always available for veterans in trouble. Eric, the manager, came out of the store. He walked over carefully. He had a piece of paper in his hand. It was a printed receipt. He handed it to Diesel. "Everything inside the store is on the house. I voided every receipt. I do not want anybody's money for any of this." Diesel looked at him. "That right, Eric?" "Yes, sir. You made the right call. I should have made it 20 minutes ago. 20 minutes ago is gone. You made it now. Walk away clean." Eric nodded. He looked at Walter. "Mr. Hayes, I am very sorry. Please come back any time. Anything you need." Walter nodded. Sergeant Park walked over. He held out his hand. Diesel shook it. "Frank, Daniel, you did a good thing." He did the good thing. 40-some years before either of us were born. We're just catching up on the paperwork. Park looked down at Walter. He said, "Thank you for your service, sir." Walter said, "Thank you for your patience." Park almost laughed. The bikers gathered around the Buick. The younger one knelt and tied a strap around the trunk to replace the broken bungee cord. The woman put a fresh blanket on the driver's seat. The older one started the engine to make sure it would still turn over after sitting for an hour. Walter stood up slowly. He walked to the driver's side. Diesel walked with him. That night, Walter slept on a real bed for the first time in 11 months. The Pinewood Motel was a single-story building on the east side of town. Linda at the desk took one look at him and gave him room 12, which was the corner unit with 2 windows. She gave him a key, a stack of fresh towels, and a small tray of cookies that her daughter had baked that morning. Walter took a hot shower. He stood under the water for a long time. He did not cry in the shower. He had used up his crying earlier in the parking lot, on the curb, in the front seat of the Buick on the drive over. He just stood and let the heat of it work into his shoulders. He ate 2 slices of bread with peanut butter. He sat on the edge of the bed. He picked up the phone on the nightstand. He dialed his daughter Rebecca in Tucson. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice was already cracking before he said anything, because she saw the area code and she had not heard from him in 9 months. "Daddy, Becky, are you all right?" "I am all right. I just wanted to hear your voice." She started to cry. He let her cry. He did not tell her about the parking lot. He did not tell her about Diesel or the bikers or the envelope. Those stories were not ready yet. He just listened to her breathe, and he said the only thing he had been wanting to say for 9 months. "I love you. I am sorry I have been a stubborn old fool." She said, "Come home, Daddy." He said, "I will think about it." He hung up. He slept 12 hours. That same night, the video the young man with the earbuds had recorded started moving around the internet. By morning, it had been watched 200,000 times. By the end of the week, it had been watched 11 million times. Local news drove out from the city. National news called Mercer's Grocery for a comment. Eric Mercer gave one statement and then refused all other interviews. He said, "We made a mistake. The bikers fixed it. That is the whole story." The Hells Angels chapter set up a permanent fund for veterans in housing crisis. They called it the Reyes Fund. Diesel never explained the name in any interview, because Diesel never gave any interviews. When reporters showed up at the salvage yard, he told them politely to leave, and they did. 6 months passed. It was spring now. Walter had moved into a small apartment at Crown Ridge. The chapter paid the first 3 months of rent. The VFW picked up the rest. He had put on 12 pounds. He had stopped sleeping with one eye open. He had started talking to Rebecca every Sunday night. He had not yet gone to Tucson. He was thinking about it. On a Saturday in April, he drove the old Buick out County Road 6. He brought a tray of cookies. He had baked them himself. They were not very good. They were oatmeal raisin and he had used too much salt. But he had wrapped them in foil and tied a piece of yarn around them like a present. He pulled into the salvage yard. The chapter clubhouse was a small building behind the yard. Diesel was outside, leaned over the engine of a pickup truck, with a wrench in his hand. He looked up when he saw the Buick. He walked over. He wiped his hands on a shop rag. "Walter." "Frank." Walter held out the cookies. His hand was shaking again, but it was a different shake. It was the shake of a man holding out something fragile that he was afraid would not be received well. Diesel took the cookies. He looked at them like they were the most expensive thing he had ever held. "What's this?" "You showed up for me. I show up for you. That is how it is supposed to work." Diesel did not say anything for a moment. Walter reached into the pocket of his coat. He pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it. Inside was a silver star, the real one, the one from 1953. He had not shown it to anyone since Margaret died. He held it out to Diesel. "I want you to have this." Diesel looked at the metal. He looked at Walter. He shook his head. Slow. "No, brother. That belongs on you. I do not need it on me. I know what I did. It was always for the people who came after. Then it stays with you. You came after for somebody. That medal stayed for a reason. I am not taking it." Walter closed the box. He stood there for a long minute, holding the box in one hand and watching Diesel. He said, "Then come with me. There is somewhere I want to go." Diesel set down the cookies. He took off his work apron. He got on his bike. Walter got in his Buick. They drove out of the salvage yard and onto the county road. Slow. They went to Pine Hill Cemetery on the north end of town. Margaret's grave was at the back, under a maple tree that had been small when Walter buried her and was bigger now. The stone said her name and the years of her life and the words she was loved. Walter knelt down at the stone. His knees were not what they used to be. He used the edge of the marker to steady himself. His hand trembled, the same hand that had chased pennies across a chipped counter in November. He took the silver star out of the velvet box. He set it on top of Margaret's gravestone. He smoothed the ribbon flat with his thumb. He took a piece of bread out of his pocket. He crumbled it. He spread the crumbs on the grass for the birds. Diesel stood 3 feet behind him with his head down, as quiet as a man can be. Walter looked at the metal. He looked at the stone. He said very quietly, "She would have liked you." Diesel did not say anything. He did not have to.